Welcome, viewers. It's another beautiful evening, another beautiful reason to have a conversation. Our channel is called Humans of HR. And the reason we thought that's an appropriate name is because whenever you come across any professional who claims that he or she is ready to unleash the professional beast within and achieve all the success possible, maybe in the background there is somebody, more often than not from the HR department, who has done a brilliant job in designing the job, right? The job design is what I'm talking about. Or maybe they have created a profile, a team, a culture which helps people become their best. And many a times, these are also the kind of people who are not very often spoken about. Which is why we have decided to talk about the humans of HR. And um, and in this series, with us, we have Mr. Chand Narayan, and the founder of Hum Consulting. With a brilliant track record, also an engineer, did his postgrad from XLR Jamshedpur. His worked with brands like Alpha Laval, Genpact, Satyam, CNBC Network 18, and his last corporate stint was as the organization head for CNBC Network 18. And he was there with them when they scaled from 600 to 6,600 people in the span of 2 years. So, been there, done that. We have Mr. Chand along with. Good evening, Chief. How are you doing?
Oh, very good. Was looking forward to this conversation.
Long pending. In fact, I've come across so many requests, people from a common circle, about why don't you start something where you're able to get chance to talk about some very interesting pieces related to HR and also other things as well. The background, I think, sets the context right. A lot of people have a lot of books in their background for the aesthetics, but the books that you see in Chan's background are the books that he has read a couple of times. I think that will set the context for anybody who logs in to watch this video from whichever part of the globe. So, humans of HR sounds like an interesting name, Chief. What is your take on that? Let's start with that.
Yeah, very true. And I think the best way to start this podcast is to go back to the roots of modern human resources as a science. So it was Douglas McGregor, who's considered to be the father of modern human resources, who wrote a very interesting and, to my mind, a very philosophical book called The Human Side of Enterprise. Now, in this book, like philosophers do, I think he put out a thought experiment. In that, he said that human beings are theory X or theory Y. Now, of course, this is taught in most MBAs today, especially in the OB1 courses. But I think he didn't intend to say that humans are theory X or theory Y. He was putting this up to us to figure out for ourselves through this thought experiment. And I'll explain that. So, in theory X, the underlying assumptions are that human beings are born lazy, they don't want to work, that they're not responsible, they will need to be driven to do something. In fact, you might want to reward them if you want them to do something that you want them to do more of, and you might want to punish them for stopping them from doing what you don't want them to do. Now, a large part of the labor force in the Industrial Revolution was driven through mechanisms of theory X. And I think that's a little unfortunate. On the other hand, theory Y postulates that human beings are self driven. They find intrinsic joy in doing something well, and that they're responsible. They will do what is needed to be done in order to accomplish things, and so on. So all the positive aspects. And the interesting part of this is whenever I've asked um, people around me, and especially when I do these leadership sessions or managerial skills sessions, I ask them, "What is your experience? who do you think people are? Are they theory X or are they theory Y? And the interesting answer that I get, at least so far, every single time, is that they say that managers mostly say that people are theory X, and maybe sometimes they're theory Y too.
Mm.
That's a very interesting, and this is coming from their real life experiences, and so it is a little surprising to me. And it is surprising to me for the following reasons. I think there are two inherent contradictions in this thought experiment itself, which should tell us, if we think deeply, who is the person who is saying that humans are born theory X? To me, it sounds like the person who is sitting in judgment over other human beings, saying that their theory X, is actually saying that I am theory X, all the others are theory Y. So if others are, all human beings are born theory X, what kind of a divine birth this person has taken, that this person is theory Y and all the others are theory X. So that's the first inherent contradiction. The second inherent contradiction that I find in this thought experiment is that if everybody was born theory X, then what is the point in saying that if I am a theory X person, then what other people are doing is normal? I wouldn't be sitting in judgment over them.
Mm.
So I think the experiment is this thought experiment is to make us think deeply about what is it, what are our perspectives? Because, of course, in that book, um, McGregor goes on to detail or to say that in so many words that whatever it is that the management presupposes results in creating structures, mechanisms, and systems and processes that assume that people are theory X. And therefore, you have the attendance management system, you have the performance management system, and you have a ton of things that management is expected to do because people are theory X. If somebody was not looking over their shoulder and making them work, extracting a full day's work, they wouldn't. So
Interesting.
there is a Buddhist song which I find very interesting and which I usually then share with people who are attending my leadership sessions. And it says that if you think that the world is a flower, the world becomes a flower.
Mm.
If you think that the world is a thorn, the world becomes a thorn. So, Harish, these are self fulfilling prophecies. If you assume that people are theory X, you will find all the evidence in your world to prove to you that people are actually theory X and Y is maybe an exception. On the other hand, if you assume that people are theory Y and you build your process, your system, your management, uh, you know, mechanisms with that in consideration, then you will increasingly find that more and more people are theory Y and the theory X are exceptions. And so I wonder, then I ask people, what is better for you? If you assume people are theory X or if you assume people are theory Y? And with due consideration, people reflect and they come back and say that it will be so much better for me if people were theory Y. So I fail to understand why people end up making assumptions about others that they're theory X and then land themselves in a quagmire of a lot of different things that they have to do in order to. So, yeah, I can understand if somebody wants to do a ton of stuff, which is ultimately useless. It adds no value to the outcome. In fact, it subtracts value. Why would they want to do it? And to my mind, management is about being able to do more and more with doing less and less. Why would you want to take on 20 additional tasks on your head? It doesn't make sense to me. So, yes, I think humans of HR can either make or break this. They can be on one side of the equation or the other side of the equation, and that makes a lot of difference. I think the two contrasting pieces that I find is that the humans of HR come into their own and they really create something which is brilliant and wonderful if they land up in a you know theory wise system.
So
And
if I was to summarize, I see that people tend to reflect what they see. I mean, if I put somebody in a theory Y system, do you think
ah,
they would act theory Y-ish?
that's right. That's
Right.
right.
So it reminds me of a Zen story. I don't know whether, I mean, you would have shared this with me of a dog running into a palace with a lot of mirrors. It starts barking, and all the reflections start barking, and then it continues barking, and then it just gives up at some point. And then this another dog runs into the same palace, looks at the reflections, and starts wagging its tail, and every dog in its reflection is actually wagging the tail, and suddenly the whole place is so happy. So you think that's and maybe now that we're talking about HR, the humans of HR, my next question is, do you think the founders, because one definition of yours has always stuck to me, which is every organization is an extension of the founder's thought process.
Right.
Okay, that's the definition, the simplest definition, and something that kind of gets a tick across all the checklists that I've come across of an organization. Um, so why do people form an organization, or do you think when people actually start an enterprise, do you think founders give a thought
Mm.
about the culture that they're going to be building? Because eventually we know that has a huge say on how the enterprise performs.
Mm. Very interesting question. We work a lot with founders who happen mostly to be very young founders, first generation founders. We do have some very significant folks who come from a line of family businesses as well. My overwhelming experience is that the founders are driven to do something which they have conceptualized. And the only way that it can be done is through putting together a group of people who can make that stuff happen. So usually at the beginning, the founders are not so bothered about culture. They're not so bothered about what what people experience at work. No founder sets out to build an organization whose people have Monday morning blues when it's time to go back to office on Monday morning. No, but I don't think anybody wants that to happen in their organization. But it invariably starts happening at some point of time. And the tragedy is that if the founders do not build a culture right at the beginning, or at least have a vision about what kind of a workplace or organization that they want to create, there will be a default culture that will take root. And that default culture sometimes is functional, mostly by accident. But most of the times it brings a lot of dysfunctionalities, which then subsequently become very difficult to change or replace subsequently as the organization starts growing. And so one of the key roles that we play as consultants to founders is help them build a culture that is functional, which reflects the values and things that they want happening in their workplaces, in their organizations. And most of these are therefore positive things that they would like to bring in. If I were to state it, even in organizational behavior, when you study organizational behavior, there are different ways of looking at an organization. One of the ways at which, one of the lenses through which organizations are looked at is what is called the mechanistic view,
Mm,
almost
mm.
as if the organization is a machine and you need to do certain things for the machine to work in a certain way. There's some very interesting models that kind of showcase this. I think Emery and Trist probably are the people who have done the most amount of research on the mechanistic view of the organization. Uh, I think even Henry Mintzberg has uh, his model of the organization is also a very interesting one to look at in terms of what happens when you standardize in what kind of what form of a organization standardizes inputs, etc.
Mm.
So in that sense, a bureaucracy, it's a much hated word, and especially actually all across, but more so in the private sector. But bureaucracy, as Henry Mintzberg defines it, is just the kind of mechanism that helps in standardizing the inputs. I mean, yeah, it becomes dysfunctional when you want everything in triplicate and in a very standardized form, which nobody can figure out.
Correct.
It is trying to get from you. But if you want to standardize inputs, nothing better than a bureaucratic setup or a bureaucracy. Uh, or for that matter, a democracy, it has it as well. So I think we need to understand that organizations are uh, created to fulfill a business need. And that need involves a lot of human beings. And so, how they come together to work together, what kind of hierarchy do you create? What kind of roles do you subdivide the work into? What kind of specializations do you put your departments into? Do you centralize it? Do you decentralize it? I think all of these are very key things that define the character of what you can expect inside the organization. And these dynamics are difficult to understand. A lot of times, only post event, when you've done something and then you see the after effects of it, is you realize that maybe this was not the best thing to have done. And this is where thoughtful and strategic HR leaders can create tremendous amount of value right from the beginning of the scaling up process of a young organization and to even larger organizations which have started displaying a lot of dysfunctionalities that are harming their business prospects. So back to you.
Very interesting. Because while you were speaking, I was scanning all the leaders that we have interacted with over the last decade, and yes, we have had our fair share of leaders who came with lag indicators, who came in and said that, okay, fine, this is a problem that we have in the room.
Uh,
And then we also have examples, I'm not taking names, but we also have examples of leaders who had the ability and vision to look at the lead indicators, knowing that, okay, fine, this is the nature of my business. I might be small today, I aspire to grow. And for me to take that path, I need to get the people processes absolutely right. So maybe the understanding or the vision
mm,
to see the organization grow and what could be the best set of parameters that could actually help me take off when I get to that size. So the lead and the lag indicators of managing an enterprise, managing a team, a set of resources. Your thoughts on that?
that's a wonderful question. I think that brings the focus completely on what our capabilities as a consulting firm are. There's been a lot of research on across the globe, the multiple models of how teams work, how organizations work, and what enables them to become outstanding performers and what doesn't. One of the interesting pieces, for example, that Google talks about is what they call psychological safety. And we can talk a lot about that, and maybe we should do a separate session on that. But what we have discovered and what we bring to the table is something very unique. And so it may be worthwhile to share that with other practitioners, humans of HRs out there. They might find some of these aspects interesting. We found that there are 7 aspects that need to be present in the space inside the organization. So if you visualize the organization as a container and there is a boundary wall that is dividing the organization's inside from the outside world, Within the inside world of the organization, there needs to be these seven elements that we think need to be present in order to create the potential for outstanding work to happen. Now, the first three of these we call the operating values. The next three we call the operating characteristics. These are built in, they're part of the DNA, they're part of the process and system of the organization. And the last one, we call it the integrity. And of course, the interesting thing that we found is that all of these things are interdependent. You don't have one, you can't have the second, and so on. So, but let me quickly unpack a little bit about what these seven elements are. And maybe I can give some examples to help people understand how they come into play. So, what we found is that the other models also use a lot of words which are similar, but I don't think they kind of display the interconnectivity between these elements. For example, um, having respect for your employees and having respect for everybody is something that a lot of organizations talk about, but they fail in the operating part of these values. And because they're not aligned, they're not connected, they're not thought through completely, which is what we help founders do. So, for example, the first one for us as an organization is the concept of when somebody experiences an organization, the first expectation of any human being is that they're treated fairly. Well, actually, everybody has an expectation to be treated, specially, to be
Mhm.
feel special. But in the absence of that, you need to feel that you're being treated at least fairly. That's the minimum threshold. Now, what does being treated fairly feel like? So I'll give you an example of how one of our clients set up their hiring process. When a young person gets an interview call from their hiring team, the hiring team also determines whether this person is going to come for the interview using their own two-wheeler or their four-wheeler. Is the person going to take a taxi cab? Is the person going to use other public transport like a metro or an auto rickshaw? And so they provide a detailed, of course, the map, location, also detailed um, descriptors for how to come reach the office without a problem. They're also provided a mobile phone number of a person who's waiting for them. And the moment this person reaches the office, this person helps them park their vehicle if they're coming on their own vehicle, helps them come up and reach the place where they're needed, where they've been invited. And since this organization happens to be in technology, they know that if a young person has come for an interview on a workday morning, in lieu of having to wear a pressed shirt and trousers and some formal clothing, and in lieu of the time spent on, probably grooming themselves, including a shave and a comb, is what they have taken away from having a breakfast. So the first thing that this person is offered is an option of very simple breakfast, which is could be upma, could be idli, could be something. And they ensure this organization has between 3 to 5 interviews for making a hiring decision. So the team, the humans of HR there ensure that all these interviews are either lined up back to back and the person doesn't have to wait. And usually, if there are more than 3 interviews, there will be a meal in between. And so their preferences are taken and the meal is pre-ordered and it's ready when the person comes out for the break from the interviews. But the and the person is also asked if they wish to see where, which is the team with which they would be likely working with if they get selected, and would they like to interact with that team. If there is another few moments, then some of the key HM benefits or policies of the organization are explained. And if they want to walk across, interact with other people in the canteen and or have a chat, the humans of HR there help this person get there. At the end of the interview, this person is the senior most person who's interviewed this interviewee will call the person back, make them sit across the table, thank them for the time, and give a upfront feedback saying that these are the 3 or 4 or 5 things that we were looking at. We think you're good at one, we think you're okay with two, but we think you're going to have a challenge with us on 3, 4, and 5. And so we are not going ahead with your candidature for this role. And then these leaders have been trained to hold and and listen and hold their responses, because any young person who's been told that you're not getting this job, they will want to justify that no, they're equally good in 3, 4, and 5. And so the leader hears them out and then very politely but firmly shares that, look, we understand, but there are these 5 of us who, in our combined judgment, feel that you will struggle. We will not be able to set you up for success in this particular role. However, we do think you might fit in some another role, which right now we are not hiring for, but we think you'll really do well in that in our organization. So if you're okay, we'll preserve your resume in our active database and reach out to you in case we have a requirement for that role. At the end of which, the a leader gives a genuine gift to this young person, and it's typically things that young people like and spend money on, like a pair of very fashionable shades, or a backpack, or a you know carry bag, or a great T-shirt, or something like that. And the leader thanks them for the time. And moment this person comes out, the humans of HR are ready with a envelope with cash, which is calculated for in terms of the expenses the person would have incurred, and they take a voucher signature because that's what your accounts team requires for making a cash payment. And they're given that, and they're thanked again. Now, the interesting part is that half of the people that they hired last year were referrals from people who were not selected in the interviews. Obviously, the moments of truth where they interacted with this organization made them feel that this organization was very fair, and maybe in some instances also made me feel special. And I wish I was part of this organization. And I know why I didn't make it for this role. And I also know that some of my friends are better than me on 3, 4, and 5. And so when I chat with them, I'll tell them, look, this is a great organization. I couldn't get through. Why don't you try? That's apparently what would have happened here. So the first one is fair play.
Fairness.
The second one is meritocracy. I think an organization needs to build a system where people are sure that if they do well, if they apply themselves, they will reap the rewards in terms of career progression, in terms of better opportunities, in terms of higher compensation, more responsibilities, etc. And that is completely based on what value I contribute, what I put on the table. And so meritocracy is the second one. And I'll run through the others in the interest of time, and maybe we can.
Now, I mean, Chief, we can just focus on the operating values in this. So
Yeah.
we can talk about
What
the
operating?
operating character in the next session. So just the operating values.
Yeah. So you can't have fair play unless you have meritocracy, and that's the linkage that I was talking about. And the third operating value is that um, uh, you can't have meritocracy unless you have transparency.
Okay, so if I just have to put it in the order, fair play, meritocracy, and transparency, right? Those have to be the operating values that you're talking about.
Operating.
Okay, fine. So you explained about fair play, right? How even somebody who is not already a part of the organization feels as if they're being treated fairly, and the possible impact of the case that you spoke about. I mean, it reminds me of I, I remember driving down to the other end of the city where my wife had an interview scheduled. She walks in, she's been given a test, and she's stumped because for the first time in her life, she has a with 30 questions and she has no clue about any of them. And by the time in another 10 minutes, she realizes that this is not even related to the job that she had applied for. And the person who actually handed out the test to her comes out and says that, oh, yeah, okay. And that's it. And the fact that she drove down across the city for the interview that they had scheduled, for the test that they said they would conduct, a test for which she prepared. She goes there and is given a completely different test. Mistakes happen, but the way it was handled surely helped us realize that this surely does not seem to be a place where you treat it fairly, right? And and so yes, thank God we never heard from them again. But but yes, fairness even from outside can be seen very clearly. So that operating value loud and clear, and the second one, meritocracy and its link with transparency, all years.
So yeah, it pains me even today to see people lined up outside an office building, typically on a weekend, waiting to be ushered in for an interview, if you have a walk-in interview or something. Surely, I mean, all the humans of HR out there, surely you can have some seating arrangement under a shade. Maybe you can give them a glass of water and a cup of tea or coffee. It's not that difficult. If you're willing to do this, it'll help you and your organization. So don't treat people like this. It pains me immensely to see this. So the link between fair play and meritocracy and transparency is this, and it's contained in that interviewing selection process that I shared, that the senior most person in the organization who's interviewed you takes responsibility and tells you why they have made a decision. You may agree or you may not agree with it, but they will transparently share that with you. They've been trained to even explain why, if a person is at level one, why they need at least a level three threshold for selecting somebody on that competence. So, and with examples, with very detailed examples, so that the meritocracy is established, and it is done in a very transparent way. If you don't have transparency, if you say no, Meri Marzi, if you say this is where we draw the line, for example, in the earlier days, a lot of organizations used to draw a line at saying only first class graduates need apply. I mean, how stupid is that? And not that the first class graduates don't deserve to have a special place, but it doesn't mean that people who have not scored less than the first class are who have scored less than the first class are significantly different. I mean, it's a line on sand. And, what people are capable of doing. I think you look at Jack Welch. He was told his brain was addled by his school teacher to his mother, and and so on. I mean, there enough and more. Einstein was considered a dullard at school in his childhood. So I think these are uh, one has to understand what is the context and how do I and choose how you ensure that people are treated with respect. And that's the first moment of truth, what you call a UI and UX. that an individual who's choosing to come to work for you experiences? And so, how have you designed it? How are you measuring it? Have you trained your people? Have you put processes and systems in place? If somebody applies, puts out a CV onto your online database, apart from an automated acknowledgement, does anybody ever come back and tell them whether it is shortlisted, not shortlisted? After an interview, does your organization go back to the person, or suddenly your HR team stops picking up the phone call from this individual? So, have you thought through, have you put in these processes and systems that will help you do what you have chosen yourself to do? So if, and that's what I meant by default culture. If you have chosen, you don't have an answer, you don't know what needs to be done now. Okay, this person I'm not selecting, and now I'll just brush aside, I'll stop receiving calls from this person. You're in a bad place already. Because by default, a denial culture has stepped in that vacuum. And so,
What you're saying resonates so well with the fact that as the organizations kind of scale up, there's so many subdivisions and silos that get created. Um, like for example, there is a team that takes care of the organization's branding, but if you look at the interview experience, I don't think there is any better, bigger opportunity
true.
to do the organization branding than anything else.
Mm,
And that seems to be working in a silo. So I think every time the moment of truth, or every time somebody interacts with the organization, and more so if they are interacting with the organization as an applicant or a possible hire,
mm.
I think the opportunity and the importance of branding the organization, creating the presenting the value that the organization believes in is extremely high. And I think not doing that is a wasted opportunity.
It's not only a wasted opportunity, it's an insult to your marketing people because you're forcing them to create fakery.
Mm.
If it doesn't exist on the ground and you're putting out a huge amount of hoo-ha around it, the gap will be significantly felt by any individual who finally joins. And so they are going to think very little of your integrity as an organization. That
Mm.
destroys the trust between the person who you have attracted, and when they discover the ground reality being different from what you marketed, you already have a problem now, because this person is not going to trust the organization again.
True, true. Fair enough. Right. So we spoke about fair play, and how that is not possible unless and until you create a system where there is meritocracy. And meritocracy, I think all the first class holders are going to disagree with you on that statement, but we know for a fact that once people are measured on aspects that are important to the organization, I think people flourish. Right? We know for a fact that the number in the certificate, yes, it was a gate pass, but once you're inside the gate, you're on your own. And another statement I remember you made once is what you measure grows.
Hmm.
Okay, uh, you measure the number of hours people are clocking in. I think we will get better at that. I mean, if an organization starts to measure the number of hours people are clocking in consistently, day in, day out, quarters after quarter, I think in 4 quarters, I think they will see a significant improvement in the logging in and the logging out times. So, what you choose to measure has significantly grown. But the other aspects, which are, I believe, equally, at least equally, if not more important, will have to be alignment,
Hmm.
alignment with the values of the team, or alignment with the goals of the leadership. These things are seldom measured. And and when we talk about meritocracy, I think this alignment will have a lot more weightage. from the leaders or the organization's impact perspective. So, um, could you just help us understand how could these softer aspects,
Hmm.
number one, be imbibed? That's important. And once that phase is done, how do you consistently measure,
Hmm.
if not measure, at least create parameters where we are able to see that it exists in the organization. It has come out from the posters that you print and paste across the organization.
So, yeah, I think it's a tragedy that it's not that organizations don't measure it, but for example, the Net Promoter Score is a kind of reflection. But most of these scores, the problem with them is that they are lag indicators, they're not lead indicators. So you know what you've been doing wrong. But then
What do we do with
maybe
that now?
they're not the only things that you're doing. Maybe you designed everything wrong. So, what do you then measure? So one of the simple ways in which, so in my last corporate role, there were about 36 different organizations that became a part of when we kind of scaled up quickly. One of the very simple measures was when you walk into a workspace, do you hear the happy hum of voices, sounds as people are going about their work? Or do you hear absolute silence? Or do you hear a lot of chaos? Each of these, and so it's interesting that we call ourselves hum consulting because we bring out that hum. If there is a lot of silence, it means that probably the leader is a tyrant and everybody is afraid of being noticed. One of the reasons, probably, in all
I
fairness.
mean, now that you're talking about it, every time you walk into a hotel, a five-star property, um, I mean, the reason why I'm giving this example is so that people are able to perceive this and maybe apply that in their work teams and see whether it's the same or any different. You walk into a property, the warmth with which they welcome you, um, the warmth with which they ask what you are actually looking for and guide you through it. There are people who don't do it.
Mm,
That's different. That's the other end of the spectrum.
mm,
And then there are people who do it mechanically.
mm,
And then there are people who do it because they know it plays an important role in what they're doing. It plays an important role in the job, and they do it. And each one has its own sounds,
mm,
right? And I think that's the energy you're talking about. You walk into a workplace, if people are doing what they're doing because they know how this adds up, the 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 bus is there. They'll look around, they'll give you a smile, and then go back, and then go back with a lot more vigor in what they're doing. So I think anybody who's tuned in to listen to this conversation, I think we should experience this ourselves, and then also check how does this play out when you walk into your own workplace. Do you hear the hum, the chaos, or the din?
mm.
And right. So
These are, Harish, if I may, these are moments of truth. And these, so what I encourage the founders and leaderships to think about is these five aspects. I ask them, what do you want your customers to experience and feel? What do you want your employees to experience and feel? What do you want your vendors and partners to experience and feel? What do you want your community, the people around you, the place where you run your business? Do you want to create chaos with your parking with your neighbors, or do you want to have it very well organized? Do you want to take care of, put some, greenery around and make not only yourself feel good, but all the others who have a look at that? And what do you do with your ecosystem? What do you want them to feel and experience? Do you throw a 1 lakh signing bonus to get this person whom you want desperately to come in and join in next week? Or do you help the person serve out their notice period, hand over properly, and then come and work for you. What do you do with the educational institutions in your ecosystem from where you hire your talent? You don't provide anything to them, but they give you a lot. Do you send some of your best people to those institutions to talk to these young students about what's happening in your field? And if they come and choose to work for you, what can they expect? It works for you as well in attracting the best of those students.
Mm.
It works for them as well. So the what is being taught in the educational institutions will always be more theoretical, will always be a little redundant. It's kind of obsolete.
Great.
Are you taking what's the latest that you're experiencing and talking to the young people about it? Are you contributing back something to that institution that gives you your talent pipeline? So I think, and when you do that, when you choose to do that, and there are 1,000 things you will need to do to cover everything, but you begin with one which is most important for you, and then you keep on going, and over a period of time, you build this capability, you build this practice. And also in terms of the how do you create the experience and the feeling for creating that experience which is consistent, you need to have processes and systems, and you need to have them run exactly the same way every single time. And
True.
or creating that feeling, that warmth, you need to train your people. The leader needs to be trained on how to give the feedback after the interview to a person who's not been selected. They need to do it with kindness. They need to do it with compassion. They need to do it with precision. They need to do it with brevity. Time is important for everybody, including this leader, but it needs to be done, and it needs to be done right. And it is a summation of all of these things that you build in into your organization's philosophy and into your DNA, through both the soft skills training as well as the hard part of the structure in terms of process systems, etc. That helps you kind of really mean what you say. Otherwise,
True.
it's just
Mm.
otherwise it's just marketing. Otherwise, it's just fakery.
Right. So, I mean, now that we talk about process, many times the processes are defined, but the people who are playing within the process don't know what this adds up to. Okay,
Yeah.
there's this very famous anecdote of a US president walking in the corridors of the NASA complex and comes across a janitor and asks him, "Hey, how you doing?" And he responds saying, "Doing really well to put a man on the moon."
Wow.
So even the janitor, he's
Typical.
following the process, he's following his SOP, but he knows that this adds up in one very, very small way or significant way, however you measure, to the larger purpose, right? And I think while we define purposes for people to follow, it's equally important that everybody is aware of the larger picture of where this goes and fits in to build what they are out to build. So I think we have covered the operating values a fair bit. We spoke about fair play, we spoke about meritocracy, and we spoke about transparency. And transparency is obviously going to be a consistent feature as we go forward. So I think for this first session, I think we'll close it here. And for the next session, I think we'll focus a lot more on the operating character and how that adds to the leader's kitty, the toolkit which helps leaders build outstanding organizations, because nobody wants to build anything less than that. And we believe so because we believe in theory. Why? Right. So with
Well
that,
said.
we will wrap the first session of Humans of HR. Once again, thank you, Chief. Lovely talking to you always. And to the ones who logged in, please do like and subscribe the channel so that you get a lot more content which engages you and helps you throw a ring on your claim of being a human of HR. Thank you. See you on the next session.
Thank you so much, Harish. Looking forward to the next one soon.